when you make a tattoo on a person, there must be poetry. Akebono Mikiri can be very good. Like he was a very straight man, like no problem in telling you this suck, this is okay. A softer Akebono finish. 60% of these people was Yakuza. So to travel across Japan with, with a very low budget, 9 people.
Massimiliano, Crez, yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here.
Cool. Your shop is in Marghera in Venice, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and I've heard some rumors that you might be either relocating or something like that.
Yeah, I'm moving very soon, I think by March, in a village close to Marghera, like 15 kilometers. But it's a new path of our evolution between me and my wife, because we want to have a private shop with a space to have conferences and to have a little workshops and stuff like that. So it's going to be not only tattooing, but also, as we did it already for all these years, but we have to go outside of the place and organize when they call us for conferences about Japanese tattooing, Japanese culture, etc. Now we want to bring the people in the shop. So we have found a place that probably it's gonna work for that. We hope so. Crossing finger.
Awesome. All right, so we got to stay tuned to your Instagram, I guess, so we can check when that happens.
Yeah. We think by March we're gonna be there.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So actually, let's just dive right into it, and let's just start from the beginning. Why don't you just share your background, how you got started with tattooing, and then got involved in this wonderful world of Horimono?
Mm. Well, I started tattooing professionally when I was 17 because I grew up in a very shady neighbor all my life, and there was plenty of people with jailhouse tattoos. At that time in Italy, only people that have been to jail have tattoos. Venice is a city on the shores, on the sea and the lagoon, and so you see people naked all year around because we swim a lot, and so you have the chance to see tattoos. My father, he was a sailor, and he has tattoos as well. So my interest for tattooing started since when I was a kid. He got tattooed in India back in the 60s. Was a very funny story, but and I always wanted to have tattoos myself. And I was looking for somebody actually making tattoos, and I find nobody. But my uncle told me that with a needle and ink, you can poke tattoos on yourself. And I tried, and I poked like 5 dots on my forearm when I was probably 6 or 7. And yeah, I felt very proud of it. Then some time has passed, and I moved from the island where I was living to the mainland. And this is where I met a guy that explained me how they make a tattoo machine uh, in the jailhouse. And I tried to replicate the tattoo machine. It was a rotary machine done with like a Walkman motor, like ancient era iPod, let's say. And and so I use a pen, some tape, and I make this very rudimental tattoo machine. But I tattooed myself with that when I was probably 12 or 14. Between 12 and 14, I tattooed myself many times on the legs, all parts that my mom would want to find out. And eventually, then my friends started to ask me, can you make a little tattoo for me? Blah, blah, blah. But the point, I was already aware of, because this was the era, the beginning of HIV uh, propaganda. Like, so the media start to talk about HIV and this and that. So we started to be scared about blood connected disease. And so I was building actually a new machine for every new that was doing, because I cannot change the needle on that. And so they have to sacrifice their work manners if they want to get it. And yeah, this is how I did it, how I began. After that, I met a guy that was tattooing in my area. He was older than me because he was like 7 years older than me, and he already has proper machines, coin machines, but he didn't have proper needles. So he was using sewing needles. And so the 3 needle line was like I would say a 14 needle liner that today you can use with a cartridge. That's the like the comparison is not exactly like this because the 3 needles that you were doing with sewing needle was very crude, that the line was very, but he was very talented. He was very, very good tattooer. His name was Marco, is Marco, and he's still tattooing, I think. And yeah, I started to, he was tattooing in his room. So we started to hang out together. We became friends. We were listening to the same music. I was into punk rock and oi music. And so we start to go to gig together, you know, like hanging out. And yeah, and I get the directions to buy some tattoo machines. Not from him actually, because he got these machines, but then this address was gone. And then we found another address and we started to order from England. And I got my first machine, and this is where I actually started. And I was 70, long time.
Oh, that's amazing. But it's amazing because you started actually. I mean, you're saying professionally or whatever 17, but you started like telf or whatever, right? Like very extremely early, and you had the guts and the will to just do it. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, the thing is that I wanted to be tattooed so bad, and nobody, was around there. Nobody accepted the minor, and in Italy, tattoo culture was very, very little at that time. There was one very famous tattooer that now is my good friend, Marco Pisa in Bologna. This was the only guy we hear about. And another one in Milan, Gian Maurizio Falcioni, is a friend of mine as well nowadays. But at that time, you must be 18, and like tattooers were very, like, in a shady kind of because it wasn't legal, and it wasn't fully legal to tattoo in Italy because actually we have the same thing you have in Japan. Like you can be accused of abusing medical profession. And that has happened in Italy during the 90s overall. So that was the thing.
Interesting. Okay. And actually, now that you say that, then very similar to Japan, right? With the whole legal side of the equation, and then but then also the community, right? I would imagine that the people who got the tattoos and stuff like that.
At the beginning, I had like, because of the place where I was living, there was a lot of criminals coming and getting tattooed by me, but also regular people. So for me, it wasn't a job at the beginning. I wanted to make tattoos because, yeah, I like it. And I was basically tattooing for 20 bucks just because, you don't want to give it for free. This is what they tell me. No, it's always get paid. And I agree. But there was punk rockers getting tattooed, all sorts of underground people, metal kids, bikers, all these sort of things. But this was the good people. Okay, this is not criminal like. And then we had the criminal. Normally, if you were into punk rock and bikers, I know it may sound strange for American people, but these people are good. Like they're not criminal in Italy. They are like just underground the culture. The criminals are like in the place where I grew up, and so my neighbor criminal come, I know them, and this is very difficult to keep distance, because I never wanted to be a criminal in my life. And even if I had the chance many times, because it was very easy to start to sell drugs and this and that, because you can make some extra money. But I was always like, fuck that. My father was like working class, my mother was working class, and I grew up with this working class mentality. And I don't like criminals. I'm sorry. Like I can't tattoo them. I'm not a racist. If you were doing criminal activities, it's no, I'm not a judge. And I'm not gonna call the cops on you. But we're not the same.
Mm. Okay. So you start basically, I guess then you what? You were learning from what you saw, or did you look at like magazines, or somebody taught you a little bit, or
So the first magazine I saw was a skateboard magazine that has inside 2 or 3 pages showing tattoos, colored tattoos. And I was shocked because the tattoos I've seen at that point was like hand poked lines, everything greeny, bluish looking, very unprofessional tattooing, we would call this today. But this for me was tattooing, there was nothing else. Two things changed my view. This magazine at first, and this I was very young, before I had the coin machine, and then the book Rancho by the photographer Masato Sudo, that was published by an Italian company called Rizzoli, which is a great editor in Italy. This book was available in secondhand bookshops all over Italy during this time. So everybody was easy to get. Was a bit expensive for that era, because the price for the book was 120,000 lira, I still remember. That is like 60 euros today. But the 120,000 lira at that time was a lot of money. Okay. Overall, for a guy like me. I remember this the second-hand bookstore have it for half price. And then I got one and I was fucking blown out. It was a revelation to me. And I never thought tattooing can be so amazing. It's like, there was no anticipation for me. I go from the hand poke to these crazy artistical photos and amazing tattoos. So it was a cultural shock, I would say. But at the same time, I knew it was impossible to propose in my country because people would never get tattoos so big in Italy. I was thinking at that era, people was getting tiny little roses that you can cover because nobody wanna show their tattoos at that time.
Mm.
This was my approach.
Okay, and then that sort of actually ties in with the second part of the question of how did you actually get involved with the whole Japanese world of Horimono?
Mm. So starting tattooing and then starting going to tattoo convention in 1993, we had this great Bologna tattoo convention. That was the beginning of tattoo conventions in Europe. And when I was there, I spoke with Marco Leoni and he let me buy professional equipment at the convention. So I started to make some more like detailed connections with tattooing. And at that tattoo convention, Horishi the third was there, and and Horiwaka as well, both from one from Yokohama, one from Tokyo area. And I was really impressed by their work. I stood at their booth for hours, I think, and I was very very impressed. And there was Horiryu, who was an apprentice of Horiwaka, and he was a punk rocker as well. And this clicked to me straight away because we were very much into punk rock. Like this was more than a religion for us at that time, because there was a big difference between us squatting houses and doing illegal gigs and all these things and the rest of society. There was no, and tattooing was our kind of thing. So to see that even in Japan, it was like that, this really got me. And so basically, after that, I started studying Japanese imagery with the books that I could find at the era. We are lucky in Venice, there is a Oriental Museum, they call it, but basically 98% of the collection is Japanese swords, Japanese tsuba, the
Yeah.
how you call that, the part that defend your hand in the sword,
Yeah. Yeah.
tsuba. And there was a few Japanese prints there. There was many little object like Indro, all the lacquer works, etc. And this all was bought by a nobleman back in 1800, and he traveled across Japan by ship. He was a very rich man, and he bought a lot of stuff. Overall weapons and armor, but also objects of common life. So I had the chance to go to this museum for free because when you are a citizen of Venice, you can go to the city museum without paying a fee. So I was there, I think, 2 or 3 times a week, and getting inspired, by this, and dreaming about going to Japan. At that time, a ticket to Japan was ah unbelievable, the price, because it was probably just the ticket was twice the monthly income of a regular working man. So to go there and then eat, sleep, etc. in Japan was very difficult because we have lira, we don't have euro at that time. So the difference between lira and yen was very bad for us. So no chance to go there. But I started to draw because I come from the graffiti, so I was drawing some new school kind of tattoos. But I like the same time old school Western tattoos, and so I started to draw a lot of them. And I find in Western old school the the technique to develop every kind of imagery, because when you can make a nice and bold line that will stay there forever, and when you can saturate the colors, this was a good starting point. That with new school I was a little more naive. And so from there, studying Japanese painting by myself, I'm self-taught. Like I've never been to an art school, never ever. I'm not good at school. Like the relationship with teacher is a mess. Like I really need to learn by the things by myself. That my except for music. In music, I have a teacher, and this is this is easy for me. But the painting, no, because they always, in Italy, they always try to tell you, why you're doing this Japanese shit? You should do Caravaggio, you should do this and that. And well, I think they are amazing and I like them, and everybody is doing this in Italy. So I was pushed the direction Japan because nobody was exploring that field at that time.
Mhm. Okay. And like, how old were you when you discovered the convention and Horiyoshi, and I think it's Asakusa Horiwaka probably. Uh, how old were you?
So the convention was in 93. I was 17.
That's
Yeah, and then I keep on going to every convention, and so I think I started to work on Japanese tattoos, like to draw Japanese tattoos, etc. While I was doing the traditional stuff, by the end of the 90s, I was already working on Japanese tattoos because at that time, a good friend of mine from Genova in Italy, Pinker, he was into Japanese tattoo as well. And he is a very smart artist. Like he can see something and he can capture the vibe of it and not replicate it, but he has the same kind of feeling when you see that. And so I choose to get my back piece by him, and I did, and I got Kintaro tattooed by him. And he was at that time he was working on several back piece over back piece, and like and that was 1999, and I was doing a bit of both, a bit Japanese, a bit traditional, a bit Japanese, a bit traditional. But after I got my back piece, I decided that this was my way. I gotta go just for the Japanese style because it's so complicated. You cannot waste your time in drawing something else. You need to focus. And I was lucky enough that I gave some flash I did to another good friend of mine in France. At that time, I was traveling a lot in Europe. I was working a bit here, a bit there, but overall, I was working in Strasbourg at Sacha Len and the Leon Kaplan Primitive Abstract was called the shop at the time. It was in Strasbourg. I remember it was a tiny shop just in the center of the city behind the cathedral. And Sasha has a very unique style. very crazy, unique style. And I was captured by that. So we became friends because we're very similar as well, music, da da da. And he was one of the first guys from Europe that I knew that was in Japan for a while. I think he was there in 1995 or something. And he explained me something about Japan, all the tattoo thing there, because he was there tattooing. He was not there for vacation, because there's a difference going there as a tourist and for business relations. And one Japanese guy came to his shop to work. A great, doing new school Japanese, but great artist. Horishi was called. Then mm, one of the guys that Tasha tattooed while he was in Japan for his first visit come to a convention in Germany, I think, where we were tattooing. I think it was Munich Tattoo Convention. And one of these guys uh, go at Sasha booth and say, "Hey, oh, do you remember me?" Da, da, da. And I say, "Oh yeah, fuck." Da, da, da. You know, that was an era with no social media, so you have to remember people like. And and they decided to go and spend some days in Strasbourg. And it was this guy was Shinryu from Ryu family. Then there was his little brother Shiryu, and the little brother Horyu. These three guys happens to be apprentice of Horiryu, the guy that was apprenticing from Asakusa Waka. So, but this guy split with Asakusa Waka at that time and became Ozuma Kaname apprentice. You know, the painter, the amazing. So these three guys, they came to Strasbourg and they saw my flash in Strasbourg. And when they saw my flash, they expressed the desire to meet me because they say, well, we've never seen doing because I was, there was many people doing Japanese already, not many, like many for that time. So maybe 4 or 5 people doing Japanese style in Europe at that time. But everybody was strongly influenced by Horiyoshi the third, of course, because he was the strongest influence of that era, was the most published artist, etc. And I was not because I don't like Horiyoshi work, because I love Horiyoshi work, but it's I was looking for something, uh, I would say, less refined for my point of view, because I really like the texture of these very old school tattoos. And I had the chance to see some Yokosuka Orihide's work already. And this really blew my mind. But then these guys go to Strasbourg, see my stuff, and they are surprised because they were coming to Europe because they were in love with Philip Liu's work. So they were looking for this kind of Japanese style. When they saw my stuff, that was weird for them. So they wanted to meet me. Sasha called me and say, "Hey, these guys, they want to see you, blah, blah, blah." And I say, "Yeah, okay. Next weekend, I drive to your place. We're going to have party all together." So we go there. Man, that was big party. I still remember for 3 days in a row, we slept on the floor, punk rock, because they all were listening to punk rock music. So yeah, that was like very hardcore, but we enjoyed very much. We became friends straight away. And they promised to come to visit me in Venice. And 2 weeks after, boom, they traveled to Venice. And they spent 1 week in Venice. They work at my shop. That was like a very nice way to start a friendship. And yeah, and we are still friends nowadays. And when I go to Japan, I still go see them. I love them. They are brothers to me. So, and this is how I get the chance to go to Japan. Because they invite me over. And yeah, and in 2003, so after a couple of years, I saved the money because at that time money was not easy to get there while tattooing for us. And I collect the money, I save the money, and travel to Japan my first time. And this is where I quit completely all other style of tattoos. I was doing biomech, I was doing traditionals, all sorts. But this is where I quit and I started to dedicate myself 100% to Horimono. Mm.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then, it's awesome also like you're self-taught because I think that's just like you were just born wired to make green art. I mean, there's no other way to interpret that. And then you mentioned, no, for sure, 100%. You mentioned obviously Horiyoshi the third, who had like a massive influence in the West, but then you also mentioned Yokosuka Horihide. You mentioned Horiryu. Um, Before we get to the question about your current style and your colors, were there other like influences that, for lack of a better term, influenced, your current style?
Yeah, for sure. Oribun and Oriuno, all the very old school tattooers that nowadays strike back in fashion, I would say. And yeah, they were great influence to me. And of course, imagine one funny thing. The first time I go to Japan, I was tattooing in a street shop in Shimokitazawa, Tokyo, no? Because my friend all works in private shop. So they tell me, yeah, if you want to be busy, we need to take you to a street shop. And I can do walk-ins like second nature. Okay. So this was the time and people come and get walk-ins. A Dragon Needle was called the shop. I was working there with Akatsuki-san, that today she is a great tattooer at Red Bunny shop in Kishicho, and we met even recently. She all changed now. She's doing Japanese style as well. I'm very happy about. And she's one strong woman tattooing, which is something that I really like. But anyway, we were there working in the street shop, and there was another street shop in the other side of the station called Tattoo Church, where I met one of my best friends, that is Carlos, half Japanese, half Brazilian. And he was working there at this shop he owns together with Kambada, the Japanese guy. And basically, when I go there, this guy saw my style and he said, "But do you know this guy?" And he showed me a portfolio of Ivan Strazi.
Mm.
And I was every page, I was shocked because this work was really for me amazing work. And they were good friend with Shad. And Shad, I know his work, of course, and I really like Shad work a lot. I think he was a great influence as well. These two guys really was the two guys I started to look after when I discovered overall Ivan, because Ivan I just saw a few pictures back in the days, I think in a tattoo magazine. But then when he moved to Brazil is where he exploded, like, and his style gets so great, that I was shocked.
Interesting. Even, I think every time I talk to that tour and I interview him, even Sasi always comes up. That's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's very like, I think because I like Mick from Zurich a lot. I got tattooed by him, etc. And he was good friend with Ivan. And Philip, of course, I really like what he does, and he was a great inspiration back in the 90s. I think his work was like unmatched by nobody else. The ideas and everything was crazy good. But even he, like, for my kind of taste, it was like really unfucking believable, because, and the thing was that I was there without seeing this thing, and I was doing, I'm not very similar to Ivan, but the concept of taste is very similar, I think. And to see there was somebody else that agree with me, because everybody was telling me, you're doing it wrong. This is not the way you should do Japanese tattoo. Everything is very flat. Your style sucks. And I was getting all this criticism, which you know, I never get offended by critics. I'm always open because I don't need people to tell me, oh, you're good or you're so pretty. I need people to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Then I decide is what if what they say is interesting or is something that I don't give a fuck. But to see that an artist was doing this style and have the same kind of taste I was looking for, this was a good confirmation for me that I was in the right path. Okay, so Thank you to Ivan.
That's awesome. Well, actually, let's not. Well, we're here because of you, so let's talk about you. So, what can you tell us about your current style and the colors? I have some follow up questions about that because I think that there's one thing before I let you answer it, but one thing that always comes up when people talk about you is certain things that you do that other people don't do. We'll get to that a little bit later, but why don't you tell us about your colors and your current composition style?
So my point now in tattooing is to make somebody's body better than when they come to me. So they come to me because they want to get a bodysuit tattoo, or even for me, bodysuit tattoo can be just one peony on the chest. This is already a bodysuit tattoo because the empty space, the non-tattooed space, will balance the tattoo. So it's very important that the positioning and everything is perfect. Then I don't give a fuck if the lines are perfect, the coloring is perfect, and all these things. This is everybody has their own technique. Somebody is bolder, somebody is more pictorial. I don't really care as long as it looks good on this person and this person looks better than before. That's my philosophy in tattooing for every style of tattooing. Okay, Japanese tattooing is a poetic style. So mm, when you make a tattoo on a person, there must be poetry, in my opinion, in what you do. There must be sense of humor in what you do, and there must be something that make transparency of strength of this person. Because to go under all the procedure that you need for a tattoo of this size, there's a lot of courage involved. There's a lot of, and so I think all these things has to be communicated through the tattoos you do. I like weird stuff that nobody does because I think that if nobody is doing that and I like it, then I should propose it, and not keep it for myself. So that's why maybe you can see some weird subjects, some weird Mikiri or weird. I mean, it's different, and I'm never happy with what's commonly pleasurable, okay, for everybody. No, this is a beauty, like, I don't know, the skull, everybody likes the skull. Yeah, okay, I want to do skulls, but I try to do skulls my way. And after years, I've seen something that I was doing has become common sense for everybody, and I'm very happy. And I don't think it's because of I did it before, but it's just that I was there when people thinks other things were cool, and I'm very happy about that.
Okay. No, that's very cool. So actually, you mentioned the Mikiri, and that's actually it. So I did a post on the Waboripedia Instagram a long time ago, maybe last year, about Mikiri, and then people started messaging me and commenting about, hey, Crez, he's doing all these different, Akebono Mikiri, Matsuwa Mikiri, all these different Mikiris. I thought back then, I was like, okay, I gotta look at this guy. What is he doing? I was like, oh
Wait,
shoot, it's amazing. It's great work he's doing. Actually, and a little bit later, we're gonna look at some of your pictures with some of these Mikiri. But then I don't know, what can you share about how did you learn about these different Mikiri types, and how do you choose what kind of Mikiri to use on a person? Do you decide? Is that the person comes and they say, oh, I want like this type of closing, or
so I let the people choose because I think if they see something and they like it, there is a reason. Maybe I don't understand this reason, but client normally know how they want to look in their body. I think it's one good thing is to educate your clients, of course, but also too much education can be um, taking you to places that you don't want to be, okay? Because it can ruin the spontaneity of the process. So Some people, I recommend certain kind of mikiri. For example, akebono mikiri can be very good either for a very fit body of somebody that go to the gym that is very, squared, because he's very formed, etc. And so too much of precision, like botamikiri, can be a little too much, you know. So a little bit more softness can be good. Also, for a person that doesn't have a perfect body, I'm fat, for example, and so I know the round body very well. And I think everybody can be, mm, how could I say that? Can be adorned by a different way, of working on the edge of the tattoo, because the edge of the tattoo is super important, and there is many ways to do the mikiri, the edge of the tattoo, and all the ways to do mikiri can fit one body or another, and not only because this is Kanto style, this is Kansai style, or this is Matsuba mikiri, or of course, this is very important for the tradition, etc. But most important is body must be more beautiful than before in my school of thoughts. And so I see the body of the person and I decide what will suit this person better, And this comes with the edge of the tattoo, but also with the composition itself. So sometimes if they have an idea, we discuss the idea, I give them my point of view, and I like the iPad because I can show them instantly what I'm thinking about that. And I think technology for that it's really helpful. Before it was much more complicated, and people that is because some people trust you straight away, no problem, but some people don't. And I think you cannot pretend people trust you because you are a professional. uh, it's their fucking body, and they're gonna live with that thing for all their life. So they have to make the decision, and you can take them by the hand to this decision. This is your role as a tattooer, but you cannot put yourself in the position where you know better than them, because you know better the culture of tattooing, but they know better about their body and how they want to look like.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because that's precisely one thing that happens because it happens, right? Some tattooers, they're just so full of themselves, right, that they think, hey, it's my way or get out of here. That's their opinion. I'm fine, I'll respect that or whatever. But I think it's very important that somebody like yourself, you tune it to their body and what they want, and then like you were saying, a better version of themselves. So it's very good to hear you say that.
Because but then everybody can make this job as they like, but for me it is very important a relationship with people, and because when you make a bodysuit you're gonna see this person for years, okay? So to have a bad relationship with a client because they don't trust you, because you are always in an argument, etc., man, it's gonna be exhausting. There is no money you can pay me for this. So I don't like this kind of relationship. So I try from the beginning. So I make before tattooing a person, we have we talk, we have a chat about their tattoos, why they want to get tattooed, if they understand what it is, etc., etc., how much it's gonna cost, because this is all very important things. Make sure you are in the right moment to get tattooed, you have the time and all these things. And it can take because we can plan it for 2 years, but it can take 10 years. I'm tattooing people since 30 years and they're still not done with the bodysuit, okay? Because they add on a bit. I'm very no problem about that. You can do as you please. The point is that the relationship between you and the client will reflect the tattoo you're gonna do on this person. So if you have a shitty relationship, very probably you're gonna make a shitty tattoo. Unfortunately. So to me, to work on a shitty tattoo is the most difficult thing in life. So yeah, I prefer not to.
Yeah. Let me say so 100%. Cool. Awesome. So actually changing topics pretty dramatically, but
Mhm.
talking about like your interests and your favorite stuff. Do you have like a favorite subject or theme to tattoo?
So I like everything that is natural and supernatural. So all the things that describe nature, it's really attracting me. For example, I love the paintings of Itojakuchu, and I love the painting of Hokusai, of course. Overall, the naturalistic part when they draw insects, fish, or all sorts of wildlife. So this really interests me. Also, the plants, everything that connects your body to the nature. This is really, really interesting for me. But I also like dragons a lot, and I like the supernatural beings of Japan, Oni, yokai, all these sorts of things. I really like. I like. I mean, it's very difficult to choose, but yeah, these kind of things is my favorite. Also, ukiyo-e really got me, like Prince of Beautiful Women or Warrior Prince. And yeah, so I cannot make a decision on what I like the most. So I draw everything, and I go in periods. Sometimes I draw a lot of birds. Sometimes I learn a lot of fish. Sometimes I do a lot of supernatural beings. So yeah, that's my way to don't get bored.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. What about like, is there something that you're looking forward to tattooing, but for whatever reason you haven't had a chance to tattoo it yet?
Now I'm tattooing that already, but it's very rare they ask me. So as I'm very inspired by Ito Jakuchu mentality, because Ito Jakuchu started painting a little late in his life, and he was painting the hens and the chickens that his parents owns, and because you want to paint what is around you, you want to paint what you can see every day, and everything can be very beautiful. And so, for example, I'm a spear fisher, so this was my really my first job when I was 13. I was living in an island, so I was catching fish to sell to restaurants illegally, unfortunately.
Huh.
But I kept this skill. Like I really like to go in the sea and dive with no tanks just to catch fish or to observe the abyss because it's very very interesting. And so I really like to draw sea related stuff of my own place, because I think the good part in being an artist that learned the Japanese way is to bring it to your place and to develop what is around you with this filter of Japanese style. And I think this is a very interesting ground to step in. And I'm doing this since uh, I would say 8 years or something like that. Before I was more into doing only the classic, etc. But then I developed this idea to bring something from my culture into this style of, into this aesthetic. Okay, so bring the ukiyo-e aesthetic in what is around me. And I really like that. So when people ask me, as live with lagoon, typical Venice lagoon fish or birds, etc., I'm very, it's very intriguing to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. So actually, I have two comments for you regarding that. One is it's amazing. So you're a great tattooer, and then you're spearfishing. I wasn't expecting that, but then also, I remember looking at your Instagram page, and you play accordion, right, or something.
Of course, of
That's
course.
crazy. So you do all this stuff, and then you seem to be good at all of them. So I just wanted to.
I have no kids. I have no kids, so I have time. No, but, music for me was very important since when I grew up, probably because my mother and the flamenco and this and that. And then I grew up in the punk rock. I started to sing, but I never played an instrument. I tried guitar, but that was not my thing. And at one point of my life, I I had this thing about accordion sounds and accordion music that was really intriguing. And so now I'm mixing my singing skills with my. I'm studying accordion since 2012. So now it start to be 12 years, and I'm composing by myself and singing something. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Awesome.
Music is very important if you are a painter or a tattooer because you need to make space between one painting and another, between one tattoos and another, and this space, if it has to be a creative space, it has to be something different from tattooing. And I was speaking with a fellow tattooer from Stockholm now, but he's an American, Theo Jack. And I told him at that time, I remember that it's nice to do something you're not good at, because re, you go through the process of learning back again. And this is very good, because it refresh, it kills your fucking ego, because many tattooers, they get success, etc. And they start to be bored in what they are doing, and I don't want that, and I know it can happen to everybody, and I find my recipe not to fall in this pattern because now, I'm 31 years tattooing, but I'm still happy every time I go to the shop. The secret is not to go to the shop too much,
Mhm.
not to overdo it, and make something that brings space between your tattooing routine and your life. Because tattooing, if you do it like I do, it really takes a lot from you, from your heart, from your emotion, because these people that you are tattooing, they're gonna suffer pain. It's a very heavy process, So if you are empathetic with these people, you feel it, and so you need to make some distance with that sometime. And for me, the accordion is a good way to do it.
That's interesting. I think that applies to life in general, no matter what you
In general, yeah, tattooing is not so special. It's just one kind of the special thing humans can do.
Cool. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was that, you mentioned adopting what you learned from Japanese culture and Japanese tattooing, and then incorporating the Venetian, the Italian elements, right? And I think that's important because even the Japanese do the same themselves, right? Buddhist elements, which are Chinese and from India and from other areas, and the colors that they got from the U.S. GIs, the soldiers and stuff like that. So I think that's how everything progresses, right? You grab from here and there, and then you mix it with your own culture, and you make cool shit. So cool.
So there is no such thing as a pure culture in the world because culture has to be contaminated to develop itself. Some people think that to maintain tradition means to, close the gate and keep it like it is. So these people normally, when I look at what they do, they suck or they're nothing special. The only way to grow, in my opinion, is to get contaminated with the knowledge, like you have a strong knowledge of what was before you, and then you get contaminated, and you can make the best mixture of the two things and get to the next level. Because why are you here if not taking something from point A to point B, and then the one that will come after you gonna make point B to point C, and so on. Because we're just here for a small period of time. Tattooing history is way longer than my life, than your life, and wherever. So we're doing just a little, you know, we're taking something and bringing it to the next generation. And so my idea is I want to leave the best that I can to next generation so that they can evolve it and make it better than what I'm doing. The problem is when the new generation does it worse than before. So this is going backwards. And so it's very important, the contamination, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's how you evolve. I mean, that's the whole point of evolution of everything, right? So that makes sense. All right, I got one more question for you before we look at your tattoos. We have like 5 pictures of your tattoos, but this is something that I always ask because somebody always, people always seem to have like an opinion. Do you have like a favorite bandit or scene from Suikoden?
See, absolutely. This is a very classic. I like Kaosho and Kyumoryu fight scene, everything involved with these two characters, because this is a very archetype. The two that first they are enemies and then they become friends and then they become the best friends. And the tattoos they have on their body, the kind of characters they are. I think it sounds with my life a lot. So I always like that. And I tattooed my first back piece, decent back piece that I did is in one of my best friend, and it's Kimoryu Shishi. So yeah, it's a great tattoo that I did, and I'm very happy. I give it to this guy, Alessio. Ciao, bello. And yeah, it's the monk, by the way, is that is somehow the counterpart, but at the same time there is a lot of things that resemble, no, in the story, and it's very similar to a lot of people that I've met in my life, and also I feel I have some part of this kind of behavior this monk has, for example, no. So yeah, these two are my favorite probably. The old book, yeah, I've read the Chinese version because it was translated in Italian from the German language. Imagine. Oh, yeah, and it's very interesting. The old book, I mean, it's a book written in 1200, but it seems like, a novel story that like a romance that you can write nowadays, even if of course, the ambience, etc., are very old school. But I like the full implant of the story because these brigands that are actually anti-system, they're very punk rock in my mind, these kind of gangs. So I really like.
That's awesome. Cool. And it's also nice to hear that you actually went through the story itself and you know what you're tattooing, because then obviously you can make the details and the like place the characters and the scenes as it makes sense according to the novel. So that's cool.
In Japanese tattooing, you can make the difference by knowing things. If you just look at the aesthetics, I think Japanese aesthetic doesn't need like it's a great aesthetic. Everybody likes it, even if you know nothing about Japanese culture. But when you know, when you study, and when you learn why this character is like that, why this fabric is like that, and why when this story happened, why there is a snow there, all these things makes your language more deep, and you can express much more things in what you do. The same cherry blossom flower, you can make a cherry blossom that resembles the tattooing of an artist that you really like, for example, and so you can make an homage to the memory of this person. And for example, for me, sometimes taking inspiration from Yokosuka Orihide, which is, I consider him my mentor because I've been to his place many times, and he really take my portfolio and I ask him to criticize my things because I wanted this guy to tell me what's wrong and what's right. And he did. Like, he was a very straight man, like no problem in telling you this suck, this is okay, this is shit, or this is not shit. So, and for me, this was like, thank you very much. And I remember, like, if I can do something that recall to his work, I'm very glad, because for me, it's giving back to the memory of this guy. And I think this guy should be remembered much more than he is. Like, not only in tattooing, I'm talking about folk art of Japan. Because the one thing that we were talking recently with many tattooers of a certain age is that, in Japan, you have this thing that a person can be considered national treasure of Japan. So if you are a good pottery master, you can be considered that. You are a good ukiyo-e artist, you can be considered that. Even when you're still alive. Tattooers are not part of this, of course, because tattooing suffer a certain discrimination as an art form in Japan. And I think this is very wrong because tattooing is a deep and ancient culture in Japan, and it touches the most important thing we have, that is skin and alive people. So if people dedicate their bodies to this, there has to be something that it's worth going deep into this.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good thing to call out. And I do wonder, as there seems to be a resurgence in interest in traditional Japanese tattoos in the last few years, if gradually, finally, the Japanese government will start accepting it more. I guess we'll see. But it seems to be going in a more positive direction from, let's say, 30 years ago.
Yeah, you never know, because when we're talking about governments worldwide, not specifically Japanese government, the amount of assholes that rules the world is pretty the same everywhere. And so you never know what they're gonna do. And for no reason they can celebrate you, and for no reason they can fuck everything up. So it's very complicated. Though I think that tattooing not being illegal anymore is good news for Japan for this kind of thing. Then, you know, I don't know if like tattooers don't need to be considered the national treasure of Japan. They don't need, because they have a good life anyway. But it's uh, it's culturally very important, to understand, because Japanese tattooing is the first pictorial tattooing in the world. This is what we have to remember. There was all the rest of tattooing there was before the Japanese style. It was like symbolism, was more like the tribal way of tattooing, which is beautiful. I'm not saying the contrary, but this was the first approach to bring like painting like subjects to the body. And so, I mean, this is it's a great innovation, in the world, because why people want to get this imagery? What is the relationship that you build with the subjects you've tattooed on? You know, because it's simple when it's a cross, when it's a religious symbol, etc. But when it's like a story, a story has different parts that you can read. For example, I can get Kaosho because I like the rudeness, and the strength of this man. Or I can get Kaosho tattooed because I like the fact that he can fight against an enemy and then become friend with him. So there is many shades of in a painting, that you don't have in a simple symbol.
All right. Let's dive into some of your works. All right. So you might have seen a couple of the previous interviews, but basically for the people watching and listening, this is the first interview that they're watching or listening to, what I'll do is I'll let Crez here talk about the great tattoo work that he did here. And then maybe at the end, I'll have some comments that I can add to. But having said that, Crez, over to you.
Yeah, this guy is a capo. He's a fellow graffiti artist from my area. So he started graffiti right right after me, and but he continued. Now I quit graffiti, and he is a very influential guy, very influential in the graffiti scene here. And I decided with him to make this tattoo. That is a typical fish from the lagoon. So you have eels, you have the sea bass, and there is a little crab somewhere and a little octopus. And then there is some plant. It's called salicornia in Italian. I don't know the name in English. Sorry. And it's a pioneer plant from the Barena. Barena is this part of the lagoon that is submerged by water for 6 hours and then it emerges for other 6 hours. So we decided this because, for example, the sea bass is a fish that hides between other fish to hunt his prey. So interesting kind of guy. And the eels are world traveler. They eels born in the Mar dei Sargassi, the Sargassi Sea. Again, I don't know the translation of this in English. And they travel across the world too, and they pass also to the Venice Lagoon. And it's a very strong fish that can survive a lot of things because they can live in fresh water, in salty water, in the lagoon, in the sea, etc., etc. So I find this composition, yeah, very interesting, and they're representing this guy because this guy grew up in the neighbors of Venice and doing the graffiti, the working class style. And what makes a big difference between Venetian people and the rest of Italians is the connection with the lagoon because this is the city in the water, and so we have a huge culture of what is under the surface of water. And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, the first time I looked at this before knowing the full story, I was wondering, hey, there's some elements in here that maybe you can find them in Japanese traditional, but it's a stretch. So it seems to be like close to either Chris or the person in here. And then as we were talking earlier about how you merge what you learn from Japanese and Japanese elements with your local culture, then I thought, oh, this tattoo really does make a lot of sense. So it's really cool to see it in here. It looks great. It looks fantastic. It looks Japanese, right? I mean, there's no telling, or maybe if I don't know if one of the fish is like local to Italy, then maybe obviously it's not Japanese, but there's nothing to tell me that hey, this is not like a great Japanese.
But it's actually all stuff that you can fish in Japan as well, because sea bass, Suzuki is very, yeah, and the eel unagi is very common in Japan, and it's considered a great food, like here in Venice, by the way. So yeah, I think also this relationship with food they have in Japan, it's very similar to the relationship we have with food in Italy, and so we really understand each other when we talk.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also like how you were saying, how well you understand each animal in here. Obviously, you said you were doing spear fishing and you're very close to the water. So it's very cool. And then obviously you can see that in the work. There's certain things that you understand better than somebody who, I don't know, who lives in the mountains and never's fished or anything like that. So, and we can see it in here. So I think that's very cool. I also see I think that's the lower right leg. I don't know if it's like, I don't know, that the body of the skin is like inflamed or whatever, but
There's a little crab,
yeah,
probably.
it's a
Yeah,
little crab. And I think I see also a background, like background in there as well.
waves, and probably there is some how you call them, maki. Japanese name is I can't remember that, but it's like a snail, a sea snail.
Mm.
Yeah, because it's all kind of animal that lives in the same ambience, and basically it's a good collaboration between, because the sea is very rich, so wildlife in the sea, because humans cannot go there. Not many humans can go and dive. You go diving, for example, in the Great Barrier Reef, in places that is beautiful, etc. But few people dive in the regular spots. Okay, and this is where you actually see how rich is the underworld of the abysses. And when you can push yourself under 2 meters of depth, so you go to 4 to 5 to 10, 15 meters, this is where you really see life in a different way because you are a guest there, and you can die every second when you're under there. So this is when you learn respect for the nature. This is, for example, a thing that I find in Shintoism that really resonate with me. The respect of everything, not only animals, but also plants, rocks, everything has to be respected.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. All right, before we move to the next tattoo, I also want to mention how cool it is that you don't mix stuff that you can only find in fresh water with stuff that you can only find in the sea, right? You know what should go where, and that's very
Yeah.
important because obviously there's people that unfortunately don't know, and then they have this mishmash of things, right? Uh, cool.
Yeah, it can be like for me, for example, when people speak about flowers, that you shouldn't do spring flower with autumn flowers. Yeah, I agree, but you can also find a way to make this happens, and it works. For example, in the kimono, often in summertime, you wear a kimono with momiji because it reminds you of autumn, and so a little cool breeze of autumn in the heat of a summer night can be refreshing, and I find this very interesting. For example, speaking about Yurei stories, you normally do this in summertime when it's very hot. So you speak about ghosts, and you have the chills, of being scared about the
Mhm.
story. And this is cultural air conditioning.
That's cool. That's awesome. No, it's awesome because again, I guess for people who might not be getting it, what I'm saying here basically is it's so great to see that Chris actually does know the meanings and the backgrounds and the reasons for tattooing the stuff that he's tattooing. So having said that, let me move on to the next picture in here. There's
See, Carlo. So this is a great client. He started with the one sleeve, then he got the other sleeve. Then he thought without back piece he didn't feel enough, so he got back piece and sides, and now he's basically full body except for the belly. And at the beginning, he was like, "Yeah, I want colors, but I don't want many colors and this and that." And he liked ginkgo leaves, so I said, "Okay, let's do it monochrome. Let's work only with yellow and black." And he liked the idea. So for me, it was very experimental because I've never did a monochrome tattoo, but it was a long time I wanted to do one. Just with yellow or red and black without any other colors. And not having many choices in colors makes you focus on the composition much more because you have to be very careful, not to overdo the colors, not to make everything works together. And he was very open, like he liked what I do, so he told me, "Look, I cannot draw, so I like the way you draw, so you make the composition as you like." And so we decided to make koi all over the sleeves and all over the ribs. And I wanted all these kois to work together, to be a composition of like when you go into a koi pond that you see swimming one next to the other, etc. And the ginkgo leaves is a very beautiful leaf, I think. When in this case, I make them very simple. I could have worked on a more detailed leaf, but I wanted to keep the design very minimalistic, so very basic and very simple. Is that
yeah, that makes sense, and it is very interesting actually. They know the yellow, and I think I see a little bit of red there, but then the black. And like you were saying, obviously that does force you to focus on making it a great composition, right? So it's very cool to see the flow here of the background, right? Which obviously has a very big importance in Japanese tattooing, and then obviously the fish there looking natural and the movement and the ginkgo leaves, like you were saying. Actually, I don't think I've seen many ginkgo leaves used, at least in the West. So very cool to see them here, and I do agree, obviously, with the I don't know. Some people think simple is a bad word, but it's not. And it looks great, right? If you made it very complex, it will look out of place given the composition. So it's very nice.
One thing that always fascinated me is that when you probably see tattoos, you see them for a few seconds because somebody just pull up the t-shirt and show you the tattoos, or even if they're naked, but how long you want to stare to a person. So I've been judging tattoo conventions, and even there, you see this person showing you a beautiful back piece, etc., for a few seconds. So it's not like a painting that you can hang it on the wall and look at it for hours. It's something that you're gonna have a glimpse of it, and this is the beauty of tattooing as well. And I think it's much more important the way they move on the body and the impact they have when you look at them, rather than the hyper details on all these things that, of course, if you like to do them as a tattooer, I can understand. It's very nice to work detailing stuff, but simplicity for me is the key. But you know, and I'm not like if people say my work are simple, but yeah, I'm very happy about that. This is a compliment to me.
Yeah. And also, as time goes by, obviously the years change the body, the years, the sun, everything changes that tattoo. A so-called simple tattoo is gonna stand the test of time versus a super detailed tattoo. It's gonna look like
Yeah.
mush when that people is older. So that's something to have in mind as well.
This specific photo was done after 8 years we finished this tattoo.
Oh wow.
So because the patina it gets after a certain time in Japanese tattooing is one of the things that make me love Japanese tattooing, that it gets better in time. Because the more the shading, get soft, the more the lines spread a bit. This is, and the color as well. I really like it when they age.
Yeah.
When it's fresh, it's beautiful, but looks a bit fake to me. Okay, I don't know how to explain that, but look like a print. Then, when the time passed and the body get again in front of it, because the body retake its place on the tattoo, and this is when it's very interesting.
Like a wine or a cigar, right? Just to give a comparison, right?
Yeah.
With time, it'll get better. That's the beauty of the Japanese tattoo, like you were saying.
Of Japan, also tribal tattoos. For example, a PA from Samoa, I think freshly done is one thing, but if you wait a bit, few years, then it really looks like a fucking tattoo. Because tattoo has to be in the body and the person has to get used to this look. So they gonna be one thing altogether. A good tattoo is when the person look like they were born with this tattoo, in my opinion.
Interesting take. Yeah. Cool. All right. Before I move on, also I do want to call out the Mikiri in here
Yeah.
also that obviously you don't see. I think most people in the West, at least, they only see the bota Mikiri or the Bukiri, right? The sort of circular Mikiri and the straight cut off Mikiri. Whereas obviously your Crez, like we were mentioning earlier, he does employ other traditional Mikiri types, and we're seeing one right here. So that's very cool.
Yeah, this guy, he didn't like, for example, neither Botambikiri, Butsugiri, he didn't like. He liked a softer Akebono finish. So, yeah, cool. For me, it was just, yeah, why not? Because if you see his bodysuit, he doesn't have anything closed. Everything is very open and it looks amazing when everything is open. If you can, why not?
Yeah. I also want to mention because before we were talking, we weren't looking at pictures, but now people, if or whoever's watching, well, obviously you can see the tattoo. Uh, in the past, again, just going back to like what I said a little bit earlier. Right now, you usually just see bota migiri, ukiri, but in the past there was a lot of agebono mikiri, a lot of matsuwa mikiri that was used, so it was not unusual. So again, I was just want to reiterate that it is cool to see people like you bringing this back to life, so to speak. So,
Thank you. I think, from the ukiyo-e, what we can see is that Akebono Mikiri was the majority
yeah.
of the tattoos because actually Botan Mikiri in ukiyo-e, uh, I can't remember now if I ever seen one. And I think it's much more natural to think to a non geometrical end of a tattoo. The geometrical end of the tattoo might be something that came afterwards, in tattooing. Unfortunately, as the tattooing history was always a bit taboo in Japan, we don't have all this information about the really ancient past of tattoos. But, even in the very ancient chronic of Chinese coming to Japan, we have people saying, these savage people that swim in the ocean and they have ocean like tattoos on their body, all over their body. What does that mean? And if I have to imagine that, I imagine that with Bokashi Mikiri, in my opinion.
All right.
Francesco, I tattooed this guy last week as well. So this is a long time we finished this frog. So I like, as I say, sense of humor in tattoos. So these guys have a back piece of a warrior with the severed heads in on the rope. So on the bottom of it, we drawn a couple of frogs, one with sake, the other with food, enjoying the party. I really like to tattoo frogs, and I think it's a very nice animal, and it has a lot of connection with some Japanese stories. For example, frogs or toads, both of them. I really like to tattoo, and in this case, I like to make a call to the Kuniyoshi art of he was drawing frogs instead of political people, so he make this kind of sarcasm over the satiric politics, I would say, which is a very interesting way of expressing for a Japanese. And I was very impressed by his work, so I decided to introduce frogs in my tattooing since the very beginning. It's very difficult to get people, was very difficult to get people a tattoo of a frog because when it's don't you want to get a frog? They were looking at me like, what you saying, a frog? Japanese tattoo is koi, is dragon. Why would they get a frog? But they look amazing, I think, and it's a good color spot. It's a tiny subject that you can place somewhere, in a small part. You can make a lot of funny things with frogs. So I really like.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, life's too short to be just totally serious. It's always good to have a little bit of humor in it. So that's awesome. And then, obviously we're looking at the frog here, uh, or the toad here by itself. But like you mentioned that there was like a warrior with severed heads and stuff like that. So it's a good balance or a good contrast to have the little frogs at the bottom. That's cool.
Mm, yeah, very important, because sense of humor and balance in the like a very tragic story with a very funny story on the side. Not I agree with you. We shouldn't take ourselves too serious. Ah, this is a fellow tattooer from Torino. I go there a guest in their shop. Then now they close and they are reopening soon, I hope. And this guy is called Roberto. And Roberto is a good tattooer. And as all the tattooers that started by the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000, he has a mixed collection of tattoos. And he asked me for this great frontal piece. I like, of course, as a natural design, snake is one of my favorite. And I think Snake is very good when it comes to work on a body that has several different tattoos, because you can, like in this case, you can match the rest of the tattoos, making a great piece, like big dimension, but at the same time respecting the variety of subject this guy has. When I make a tattoo on a person that has other tattoos, for me it's very important to check what is around what I'm doing. I don't like to make my thing regardless of the rest, because it's very important to try to build harmony between this tattoo and the tattoos that he already has. And I try to do this with this piece. That's why the snake move in a certain way. The central part of the head is a little is not in the center, is a little more off, and the flames resemble a bit this Borneo tribal he has on the upper side.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like what you did with the gradation on the skin of the snake.
Sorry,
Look,
with the
the gradation, like
oh yeah,
yeah, it's very it's captivating. It's very very cool. And then obviously with the it matches, right? The color scheme matches, but then I think just the combination of what you did with the gradation and then the colors, it's very nice to look at. It's very cool.
thank you. I tried, because this guy don't like colors that much, he says. So he wanted something red and black, and that's it, which for me is it's very cool. Because when you have limitation in coloring, I think this is where you have to focus on composition and design much more. Because if I can use yellow on the flames and a bunch of colors, green and this and that, you don't need, because you can make contrast with colors. So you're probably gonna think about color scheme much more than the design. But uh, limitation sometimes is a plus.
Yeah, 100%. No, there's not much I can add here other than it looks really good and it matches, like you were saying, it does match with everything else. It's sort of makes me think about like traditional Americana style of tattoos. It really fits in really well. So
Se. Yeah, because I still like, traditional Americana. Um, mm, for me, I like old forms of tattooing probably, and it depends if they look good on the person. This is and if it's if there is a coherence. For example, there is a cop in my city, like that has a Chicano sleeve. I mean, a cop with a Chicano sleeve to me doesn't seem right. He has all these guns and gangster related stuff, but he's a cop. So it's very weird to me. I don't know. I just doesn't make sense to me. But the tattoo is well done.
that's cool. That's funny. That little side story.
Yeah, isn't it funny? I mean,
I mean, he's trying to like integrate. Maybe he's like an undercover type of guy.
no, because he's not the cop, that goes under criminals. He's like one of these traffic cops. So yeah, man, like this is no sense to me.
That's funny. Cool. All right. I think this is the last picture in here. I thought it was very interesting. Maybe I'll just start a little bit with the comments, but I thought it was very interesting because even though I hear a lot of people, they want to get like wolves and stuff like that, in reality, you don't see, at least in the West again, you don't see that many wolf Japanese style tattoos. And I really like what you did in here. And then not only with the execution of the composition, but then also this gaze of this gray wolf here. It's like so intense. It's so powerful. So I just wanted to say that before I hand that over to you. But I really do like this piece.
Thank you, man. So in this case, it's a funny story because the guy is called Alvisa, and his family name is Lupo. Lupo is lobo or wolf in Italian. No, so he said, he told me. Might sound stupid, but I would like to get a wolf tattooed, you know. At the same time, I like Japanese tattoo. Do you think it's possible to do that? And I say, yeah, fuck yeah, why not? Actually, for me, when it's challenging, I really like it, you know. And who am I to tell this guy he should follow the Japanese tradition and so he should get something that is more Japanese? Because in my opinion, he liked the Japanese aesthetic, but the meaning he want to give to this tattoo is something that has to do with his family, you know, and all these things. So why not, you know? And so I draw this, and actually it was very nice to because I like to draw wildlife. So I go through a lot of pictures of wolves yeah, I start to think what kind of background would suit this kind of tattoo and with the body of the guy. So I thought, yeah, maybe the wolf and the river in the bottom and then clouds on the top.
So,
Get the first the half sleeve and then he go down and he get the full sleeve done.
oh, interesting.
And we and in the river because you see the bottom part of the big wolf has some waves going on and that's a river coming down and then in the forearm, we make a koi fish.
Interesting. Oh, this is great. This is great. And again, a lot of people, I don't know, traditional Japanese tattoos, but then in Japan you do have wolves, even though they're not
Of
that
course.
prevalent anymore. And you have bears and boars and stuff like that that you don't see that much in traditional Japanese tattoos. But it doesn't mean you can't, right? Because it is Japanese, and so
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see fox much more than wolf,
yeah.
but for example, you know this band, the Seppuku Pistols?
No.
It's a great mix between a taiko drum and punk rock. It's weird. We saw them recently, and their symbol is a wolf actually, and it comes from the ukiyo-e. Now I don't know exactly who made this wolf, but it's very beautiful. For example, so all everything that you have in nature can be drawn in the style of ukiyo-e. You know, so just don't be stuck to the same some you know the important is that you want to draw because my point is you don't just replicate ukiyo-e but you redraw ukiyo-e until you get the skills to draw your own subject in this style, you know. This is the big difference and I draw everything they ask me. So unless they don't bring an ukiyo and they say I want exactly this one, and I can be happy to do it. But if they ask me for my skills, then I redraw everything the way I think it's gonna suit them.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this was the last picture, but actually, if you take a look at Crez's Instagram, there's a lot of really amazing work. For example, there's one of I remember in the front, this guy has a like a tire, I think it was. It's very cool. But obviously, if we keep talking about his actual tattoos, then we'll never finish uh the interview. So
Thank you very much.
I do recommend people to just go to his Instagram page. We'll link it later, and then to check the workout. But having said that, let me stop sharing and get back to the main man here. Let me see. Looking at the questions in here, there's a bunch of stuff that we've sort of talked already as we've been going through the conversation. But you mentioned Ivan Sassi, you mentioned Yokosuka Horihide. Has there been anybody else, or maybe I don't know, a resource, a book, or an artist, or a tattooer that was like a really big influence in your style?
Yeah. Shiryu from Ryu family, I mentioned them before as my good friend, but also as an artist, Shiryu really got me. So the first time I was in Japan in 2003, I was a guest we spent 1 month together. So I stayed at his place in Niigata. Niigata is a very beautiful city, I think, because nearby the mountains, in front of the sea. So, and it's a city that nobody normally goes. So in 2003, they see no gaijin there. And it was very, very good because so he was doing a lot of Yakuza people and private shop every day, 5 appointments a day. And 60% of these people was Yakuza. So I met Yakuza people, we hang out with Yakuza people, and I understand what's this kind of word. And it makes sense to me. Shiryu is very good person to find a balance between because he's a professional, so he's very good into finding a balance between yakuza and regular clients. It's very professional. He's very refined style, etc. Very personal style. And unfortunately, I think picture can't really describe the goodness of his work because he's very, very good. And he gave me another view of Japanese tattooing. And then his brother Horyu in Tokyo, also great friend of mine, and as well, he's more into the shokunin, so more like working class people, firemen. He's the really Edo guy. So if I have to think a tattooer that really represent Edo is Horyu, no, like hands down. And I don't know if I can say that, but he have an affair with a geisha, so he's together with a lady, Miko-san, very nice. And all his friends are carpenters, firemen, and he live in Mukojima, which is like the blue collar area of Tokyo, and he's related to all these kind of people, very working class, and his style gradually became more and more old school, and now he's at the point that really make very blown out lines and very like beautiful, I think, very great. And now a lot of people that get more famous than he is probably he's doing this thing, but he's this research is Horyu research, I think, since before many others started. And I'm very glad that he has this strong influence in the taste of Japanese tattooing. Taking back because his friends, I have pictures I cannot share for because in Japan people with tattoos they don't want to be seen, and I respect that. But we hang out even recently together, and we got drunk and karaoke with his friends, and we take off T-shirts, and they have tattoos that really looks like done by Oriuno. And this was a tattooer from the area of Mukojima, active during the 70s, 80s, and beginning of the 90s. Then he died. And this guy was doing this the old way, and you will never know about him. That's what I was, before when we see because it was illegal, there is not that many information. Because there is great tattooers that you will never know about because of this, unfortunately.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and talking about Horyu, I think there's a resurgence, or not a resurgence, maybe a surgence, like the first, a lot of popularity, a lot of foreigners or Westerners that want to get that either respect his work or want to get work done by him. In fact, a lot of people have sort of DM'd me about him, and I'm like, well, I don't know, reach out to him, talk to him, right?
Yeah, so Oreo doesn't speak in English, and but he got into a documentary from Arte that you can see in the channel Arte, and this is got his popularity in France, for example, in Germany, I think, because it's a German or French channel. Anyway, Horyu is like now he has Instagram, but he's not the biggest, social media kind of guy, and he's not interested in to be over busy. He just want to do things his way, very classic, very traditional. So I think Horyu is great inspiration and a great Japanese tattoo spirit. So same as his brother Shiryu, they're both in two different ways, but they're both great, great people. I think in Japan, they are part of my generation of tattooers. So people that now is around their 50s, and like we came out in a moment where tattooing was exploding. At the same time, we have lived a bit of the underground that was before, and we step into the new world of tattooing, and now it has changed completely. I don't complain. I'm very glad that I was there when it was still old school, and I see all the evolution, and I cannot complain about nowadays. Even if I hear people very crazy about but now with social media everything is fucked up. It is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Even if you complain, it won't change.
That's what I was about to say. Hey, it is what it is. But actually, something else that I wanted to say is you could probably. I'm sure a lot of people might be interested in this, and maybe you're planning it already. And I just don't know about it. You could write a book or something, right, about your experiences all throughout these different eras of tattooing, right? I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah, I could, but I don't know if writing books is my way. I write songs a lot, and this is more my kind of thing. I was thinking to do it many times. Many people ask me to do it, even because there is a lot of things I cannot share for legal reasons. Now, but like tattooing back in the days was having to deal with a lot of it was not simple, you know. Sometimes you have killer coming to your house and you have to deal with these people. You know, now it's very different. You know, I some people it's kind of nostalgic of what it was. You know, uh, nostalgic is not my kind of thing. So I know how it was. I loved it back then, even if it was dangerous. You know, and sometimes sometimes was not dangerous, but sometimes it was dangerous. And but I like it today as well. You know, today like artistically is much more easy. You know, people come and they want to sleep. You don't have to convince them. No, rather than get the 10 little things in 6 months, get one, and you know, and we do a nice work. Once was impossible to make a sleeve in Italy, for example. So now you can, and that's kiss your hands for that.
Yeah, cool. And what about like sources of inspiration or of references? Do you look at books? Do you look at like statues and stuff like that? Where do you get your inspiration?
Yeah, I think there is. So there was this. Hotai Publishing was a publisher in Leiden, Holland, where basically in the end of the 90s and for a good part of 2000, they published one book better than the other. Like one after the other was great. And so you have book about Kunioshi, books about like not it was not only on one person, but for example, they did the first book I've seen on Suikoden with all the prints of Kunioshi explained, etc., etc. So this was the one of the greatest source of reference I've had. Then I have a huge library here home, and I think books are the main. The most important thing if you want to reference. I also look a lot of naturalistic pictures. For example, I go and take pictures of things that I want to portray. Uh, so, for example, I go in the forest and take picture of mushrooms, of frogs, of whatever wildlife I can see. Same under the water. I bring a camera and take pictures under the water. I was in Japan taking pictures of waves breaking into the rocks, you know, and you really understand how things physically works, you know, because if you copy the waves that Horishi does, okay, beautiful waves, beautiful solution. But if you go to the source, so to the sea, and you see it for real, then you can come out with your own idea of waves. And I think this is very important if you want to do Japanese tattoos, that you have your own backgrounds that looks like your thing, you know. Same for clouds, same for, you know, when I was doing my clouds, like this, similar to Tibetan clouds, etc. Again, people was telling me, but not, this is not the way you do clouds in Japanese tattoo. You have to do the spiral and, you know, and say, okay, this is one way to do clouds. But then there is many ways to represent clouds, even in Japanese reference. There is booklets that you can find it at the flea markets in Japan, only with clouds reference, for example, that use it for the kimono pattern. And there is a bunch of ways that you can use. For example, kimono pattern is a great reference for tattooing, I think, because many people that was doing kimono design became tattooer during the Edo era. So they can tattoo what they know already. So that's why, So very important is reference is something that you get inspired from, not something that you replicate. This is for me very important. The way you use reference that makes the difference. It's not the kind of reference. Nowadays, you can go on Pinterest. If you know the right words, you don't need all these books. You can go on Pinterest, but the way you use the tool, this makes a huge difference. Of course, with the book, you get to see stuff that you don't see on Pinterest because people think everything is in there, but it's not. Like I assure you, books are different.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's the difference between a real artist or an artisan and on a printing machine, basically, because you're just copying things. There's no soul or there's no part of you into that composition. So I agree 100%.
When people is afraid of being themselves, this is why should the customer come to you if you are afraid of doing what you paid for, and you just want to replicate something that works. I think an artwork is something that I like, and I'm the artist, and I decide that I like, then I share it with people. They might like it or not, but I will never draw something because people gonna like it. This is not the way, because many people say, I got to do something more commercial because I need to work more. And now there is a crisis of tattooing and this and that. Yeah, but if you work in this direction, you will never get to the point that you're looking for. I think that's my opinion. I always do it the way I wanted. And then I was looking for the people that like what I like. And there is for sure somebody that is going to like what you do. And you just have to connect with these people. And now with social media, this is way much easier. For some people, social media have been a revenge, let's say, because back in the days of the magazine era, the magazine producer decided who is famous, who is not, what is good and what is not. And now it's Instagram deciding, of course, but the algorithm is the same for everybody. So I think somehow I've seen good tattooers that nobody gives a fuck before, for example, like Horio, becoming busy because they don't need the filter of a magazine anymore and they are out there and somehow people get to see their work and they like it. And this is for me very fair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's meritocracy. It's based on, are you putting in good product, good work, good products, whatever. And if you are, then obviously people are going to like it. If not, then well, they might not.
The way they work is one thing, but then there is the person as well, and the way you behave with people. You can be the best tattooer in the world, but if you're an asshole, I don't want to get tattooed by you. I rather have a shitty tattoo from a great person than a beautiful tattoo from an asshole because I don't want something that reminds me of an asshole for all my life. We are surrounded by assholes, so
That's a good point. That's a good point. Cool. All right, man. I got two more questions for you. I know it's super late in Italy. It's well over night over there. But I know a lot of people took notice. I certainly did of this project that you seem to be involved in over in Japan. You're in the project. They're interviewing a bunch of traditional Japanese tattooers. I think Horyu is one of those people. I think the project
yeah.
is called Japan Tuxedo. What can you tell us about that whole thing?
So basically, Nino Grizzuti is a guy doing a lot of video making of tattoos. Is one guy of the new generation of tattoo promoter, I would say. He came to my place asking me if I have connection in Japan because they wanted to produce a kind of TV series This was the beginning of the project concerning tattoos in Japan and more in general tattoos in the world. So my contribution was for the Japanese part. I It was a long time. I wanted to make a kind of documentary to explain something of Japanese tattoos the way I've seen it. Okay, and um, and so I say yes. Okay, even if it's not my job, I'm not. I did a lot of interviews with tattooers, etc. But this is different on paper. Then you go there with the filming, producing, and all these things. This is very complicated, but I decided to accept, and I'm happy I did because the interviews we did there was man, I cried many times, like while I was interviewing people, and it was very touching because there is a big difference from when I've been to Japan the first time and nowadays. That in between there was the trial of Taiki, this guy that got into problems with the law because he is a tattooer, and he got through this trial in three different grades. You say, like three different stage of the trial,
Yeah.
and in the end, he won the trial, and he was supported by the community of a part of the community of tattooers, and from another great friend of mine that is Eru from Wizard Tattoo Supply in Japan, the first tattoo supplier in Japan that still produces machine, etc. And it's all people that I've met all these years, and there was always this thing that tattooing is illegal. I have to cross the border, hiding my tattoo stuff. And when they stop you, you always sweat because when they kick you back home, it's, I'm fed up with that. I think tattooing should be legal everywhere. I don't know if it's better when it's legal or if it's worse, but for sure, for the sake of surviving the craft of Japanese tattooing, it is very important they legalize it. Because, there is nothing to do. If something is illegal, the level of this craft will boom, 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 slowly go down. And we were seeing that, like we were we were at the point that we were risking tattoos in Japan to disappear completely because there's actually more people probably doing Japanese tattoos outside of Japan rather than in Japan. And this is not okay because this is the fatherland of this culture, so it is very important, even if I'm a foreigner, but it's very important for me to see that in its fatherland, tattooing is considered and it's respected. Maybe not everybody will like it. We don't want that, but it's important that at least it's legal to make your own job. And Taiki, this guy, did it and fight very strong. After 5 years, he couldn't tattoo. It was very tough. So great on him. And I thought that this was a time to make a documentary because now there is a great transition between the old school people that thinks now that we should be underground, we shouldn't, you know, make it legal because then there's a lot of problems. And I understand them. I hear them. And at the same time, there is people that say, no, tattoo has to be legal, So I think in Japanese tuxedo, we're gonna try to represent this world of Japanese tattooing nowadays with with a lot of interviews and some things that is related to tattooing, but is not straight in tattooers, etc. So, it can affect Japanese economy somehow, etc., etc. So, yeah, I'm glad that we did it. It was very, very, very difficult, man, because to travel across Japan with, with a very low budget, 9 people moving from one hotel because everything is self-produced. And now we're talking, crossing finger, with the producer, so we probably gonna see the light of this project. So yeah, it was very complicated, but the crew was amazing, and the director Giovanni is a great director. and all the guys involved in the trip was very professional. I mean, they work like Brigitta was the sound engineer. She worked nonstop every day. We never had a break for 3 weeks in a row because, we have to squeeze and make everything possible. So it was very difficult, but we did it. And I see the people we interviewed, they really understand how our spirit in this. And yeah, we had great encounters at Gifu City Orihide. Like 94 years old man, that's like so crystal clear in his mind, and he explained us stories of his life that, as a tattooer, it's like tattoo history firsthand, up there. So I really wish we can share that as soon as possible.
Awesome. I'm really excited to see. I think I first heard about it. I think it was coming from Japan. I was either still in Japan or coming from Japan because I was getting tattooed. I was like, "Oh wow, this is amazing." I mean, what's going on here? So I'm really excited to see whatever it is. I think there's a link in your profile to the page because he
See,
has a page. So
so they have a page. Like I took care of all the connections in Japan and going visiting the tattooers, interviewing the tattooers. That's me. All the social media, etc., is by Nino Grizzuti, and Nino is behind the TTS World and behind the White on Black Tattoos, different Instagram pages. So he's taking care of that. I took care like of all the questions, etc. So I think now is just we have to be patient because we still don't know if it's gonna be episodes, if it's gonna be one documentary, if it's gonna go through festivals, or
mm,
it's very complicated word that I don't know about. So I let them work on it, and I trust them.
well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I encourage everybody to follow the page to get the latest updates, whether it's episodes or or a documentary or whatever. From the previews that I saw, I think it's gonna be really really cool. So I'm really looking forward to it myself. Okay. All right. Chris, last question. We talked about your past. We talked about your present, what you're doing right now. What can you share about the future and what's in store for the future for you?
Mm. So my future is between music and tattooing as usual. But I have this musical project that is really taking a lot of efforts and it's coming out pretty intense. It's called 30 denari. 30 denari is the 30 silver coins for those who are not familiar with the Catholic religion that Judah get as a payment to sell Jesus. So the band is very so we're talking about things with this is not music for entertainment, is music of with a lot of contents. We're very deep into philosophical and political discussions. And nothing to do with the mainstream politics, either woke or right wing or left wing. We are really tired of all that, and we are trying to speak a different language. So this is one project. Then I have my solo project with the accordion. And this is always regarding the music. And this will be a bit longer, but it's gonna come, and it's gonna be very similar, politically wise. But yeah, more for music that you can listen into a pub, for example.
Right.
And then tattooing, I'm gonna move the shop. I'm gonna focus. It's gonna be a private shop, so I'm gonna work a little less because now I'm working still 4 days a week tattooing and one day drawing the tattoos for the week, etc. But I think I'm gonna do like 3 days and I'm gonna work a lot on my pyrography project. So not only painting, but also wood burning. And this is really something that I started a few years ago, and it's really taking my interest because give me the chance to use all the skills that I've learned in tattooing and drawing the ukiyo-e style in a form of expression that is really underestimated, because woodwork of this kind is very interesting for drawing Japanese related items. So yeah, it's this is all. I'm always in an evolution, so I'm trying to understand what I want to do, what I want to do when I grow up.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm looking. I mean, I discover I like accordion music too.
Oh,
So 30 denari. I'm gonna stay tuned for that one. And
yeah.
of course, what you just mentioned about the woodwork, that's also very interesting. I didn't know about that. So I guess I'll have to follow your page.
Yeah, because I'm not posting much, but I did some post, but yeah, I'm gonna do more. So
Cool. All right, man. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much
oh,
for
thank
investing
you,
the
thank
time.
you. It was a pleasure. By the way, I bought your book, and it's a very nice book. I recommend everybody Waboripedia. The book is very good for the studio, like, because then you can give it to your clients, and easy explanation of all the main things. So great job, and I like the old page and all the work you're doing. I'm very happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for all the work that you're doing and for investing the time with us here. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Ciao, ciao.